Millionaire CEO called her Barren and kicked her out. She returned pregnant and married to his rival. Maybe if my wife wasn't Barren, we'd have something to celebrate besides quarterly projections. The champagne flute trembled in Sophia's hand. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some pitying, others calculating. The silence was deafening. Ethan. Her voice cut through the humiliation like steel. We agreed to discuss this privately. Did we? His gray eyes were ice cold, unfamiliar. Because I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when my investors ask about the Cross legacy. Margaret Cross's satisfied smile gleamed from across the room. This was the moment she'd orchestrated, the public execution of her daughter-in-law's dignity. Sophia set down her glass with deliberate care. There's nothing more to discuss. Welcome back to Golden Family. I'm absolutely thrilled to see our incredible community growing stronger each day. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed and joined this journey with us. Now, let's get back to the story. The boardroom moment wasn't just humiliation. It was the culmination of months of carefully orchestrated cruelty. The fertility test results had arrived 3 weeks before, delivered with clinical precision that cut deeper than any blade. We need to know what we're dealing with, Margaret Cross had declared, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany desk in her son's office. Schedule Sophia for comprehensive testing. I want answers. Ethan had shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. Mother, perhaps we should discuss this with Sophia first. Discuss what? Whether your wife is capable of producing an heir. This isn't a democracy, Ethan. This is business. Margaret's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years building the Cross empire alongside her late husband. The investors are asking questions. Your board wants assurance about succession. We cannot afford uncertainty. When Dr. Harrison, the family physician who'd served the Cross family for decades, suggested including male factor analysis, Margaret had waved him off dismissively. Focus on the wife. That's where these problems usually originate. The test results had been devastating. Low likelihood of conception. The words echoed through their penthouse, settling into the marble surfaces and designer furniture like a death sentence for their marriage. Sophia had carried that diagnosis like a scarlet letter, watching Ethan grow more distant with each passing day. You're being dramatic, he'd said when she tried to discuss their options. We'll figure something out. Maybe adoption, maybe surrogacy. There are solutions. But his tone suggested he was already calculating exit strategies, already measuring her worth against her ability to produce the next generation of Cross Industries leadership. Now, standing in that boardroom with 20 pairs of eyes dissecting her like a failed business proposal, Sophia understood that their marriage had never been about love. It had been a merger, and she was the underperforming asset about to be liquidated. The room remained frozen after her dignified response. Margaret's satisfaction was almost palpable, radiating from her corner seat like heat from a furnace. She'd orchestrated this moment perfectly, the public acknowledgement of Sophia's inadequacy, witnessed by the most powerful people in their social circle. Well, Margaret said, breaking the silence with theatrical concern, perhaps we should discuss this privately. But her timing was deliberate. The damage was done. Everyone in that room would carry this story to their country clubs, their charity galas, their board meetings. Ethan cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of his presentation. As I was saying, Cross Industries is positioned for unprecedented growth in the next quarter. But Sophia wasn't listening anymore. She was watching her husband transform into someone she'd never really known, or perhaps someone she'd always known but refused to see. The charming man who'd swept her off her feet 4 years ago, who'd promised her forever beneath a canopy of roses, who'd whispered sweet declarations of love during their honeymoon in Tuscany, that man was revealing himself to be an illusion. The real Ethan Cross was standing before her now, calculating, cruel, and utterly without empathy for the woman who'd reorganized her entire life to fit into his. That night, she lay awake in their king-sized bed, listening to Ethan's measured breathing. He'd come home late, citing urgent business calls, but she could smell another woman's perfume clinging to his shirt. Even his infidelity felt like a business decision, hedging his bets, exploring other options while his current investment proved disappointing. Ethan, she whispered into the darkness. Oh, do you remember our wedding day? What you promised me. There was a long pause. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. People say a lot of things at weddings, Sophia. It doesn't mean they're binding contracts. The next morning brought the ultimate betrayal. Sophia woke to find her belongings already packed, boxes stacked in the foyer like tombstones marking the death of their marriage. Professional movers worked with military efficiency, erasing 4 years of her life from the penthouse she'd helped design. Mrs. Cross. The head mover approached with a clipboard in hand. We've been instructed to have everything removed by noon. Mr. Cross left these for you. He handed her an envelope containing divorce papers already filled out, along with a settlement offer that felt more like severance pay than alimony. No conversation. No explanation. No opportunity for discussion or reconciliation. Just the cold efficiency of a CEO cutting losses, eliminating dead weight from his portfolio. Her sister Maya arrived within the hour, taking one look at the scene and immediately wrapping Sophia in a fierce embrace. He can't just throw you out like this, Maya fumed, her dark eyes blazing with protective fury. You have rights. You could fight this. Make him pay for humiliating you. But Sophia felt hollowed out, emptied of the fight that had once defined her. She'd spent 4 years trying to be the wife Ethan wanted, the daughter-in-law Margaret demanded. She'd sacrificed her consulting business, her independence, her voice. She'd made herself smaller and smaller until she'd nearly disappeared entirely. Let him have it all, she whispered, staring at her reflection in the hall mirror one last time. The woman looking back was a stranger, perfectly styled, expensively dressed, and completely without substance. I need to remember who I was before I became this. As they loaded the last box into Maya's car, Sophia turned back to look at the penthouse one final time. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Seattle's skyline, but she realized she'd spent 4 years looking out at a world she was no longer part of. She'd been decorative, ornamental, a beautiful accessory to Ethan's success story. You know what the crazy part is? She said to Maya as they drove away. I actually loved him. Not the man he pretended to be at the beginning, but even the real him. I loved him enough to believe I could be enough for him. Maya reached over and squeezed her sister's hand. That wasn't love, Sophia. That was you trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. The penthouse grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely, taking with it the last remnants of the woman Sophia had tried so desperately to become. But as they drove toward Maya's apartment and an uncertain future, something unexpected began to stir in her chest. It felt dangerous and unfamiliar and absolutely terrifying. It felt like hope. Maya's guest bedroom became Sophia's sanctuary and battlefield all at once. The room was small, cramped with mismatched furniture that bore no resemblance to the designer perfection she'd left behind. But for the first time in years, every object in that space belonged to her. The books she'd rescued from storage, the laptop she'd bought with her own money, the simple desk where she would rebuild her life one keystroke at a time. You don't have to do this alone, Maya said, setting down a steaming cup of coffee beside Sophia's computer. It was week 3 of her new reality, and Sophia had barely left the desk except to sleep and eat. Yes, I do. Sophia's fingers paused over the keyboard where she'd been crafting her business plan. I need to prove to myself that I can. The Corporate Training Solutions website went live on a Tuesday morning in October. Sophia stared at the screen for 20 minutes after hitting publish, her heart hammering against her ribs. The logo was simple, the design clean but basic. Nothing like the glossy corporate presentations she'd grown accustomed to at Cross Industries. But it was hers. Her first client call came 2 days later. Ms. Morgan? The voice on the other end belonged to Janet Torres, HR director for a mid-sized accounting firm. I found your website through a Google search. We're having some serious communication issues between our departments, and I wondered if you might be available for a consultation. Sophia gripped the phone tighter. Absolutely. I'd love to discuss how I can help. The consultation went well, more than well. Janet was impressed with Sophia's insights, her practical solutions, her ability to identify the root causes of workplace dysfunction. But when it came time to discuss a contract, Janet's enthusiasm dimmed noticeably. I'll need to discuss this with our executive team, she said, her tone suddenly formal. We'll be in touch. The call never came. This pattern repeated itself over the next month. Initial interest, successful consultations, enthusiastic responses, followed by sudden radio silence. Sophia began to suspect what was happening, but it wasn't until her 4th potential client accidentally confirmed her fears that she understood the full scope of Margaret Cross's vendetta. Listen, whispered Rebecca Chin, the operations manager at a tech startup, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Margaret Cross called our CEO personally. She warned him that you were unstable after your divorce, said you might be unreliable, potentially damaging to work with. I'm sorry, I tried to advocate for you, but... The line went dead. Sophia sat in the coffee shop where she'd taken the call, staring at her silent phone. Margaret's reach extended far beyond what she'd imagined. The woman who'd controlled every aspect of Sophia's personal life was now systematically destroying her professional future. That which, Maya exploded when Sophia told her that evening. She can't just sabotage your entire career. She can, and she is. Sophia poured herself a glass of wine, the cheap kind from the grocery store, not the vintage bottles that had filled the Cross penthouse cellar. Somehow it tasted better. But you know what? She just made a critical mistake. What do you mean? Sophia's eyes held a fire that Maya hadn't seen since they were teenagers. She underestimated how desperate I am to survive. And desperate people fight harder than comfortable ones. The next morning, Sophia changed her strategy completely. Instead of targeting large corporations within Margaret's sphere of influence, she began reaching out to smaller businesses, startups, companies that operated outside Seattle's established power structure. She cold called, sent emails, showed up at networking events where Margaret Cross would never be caught dead. Her first real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a women's entrepreneurship meetup held in the back room of a downtown bookstore. The gathering was small, scrappy, filled with women who were building businesses from nothing but determination and coffee. "I'm Sarah Kim," said a woman in her 30s, extending her hand after Sophia's brief introduction. "I run a digital marketing agency. We're growing fast, but our team communication is a disaster. Half of us work remotely, and the other half can't figure out how to collaborate effectively." "I can help with that," Sophia said, and meant it. Sarah's company became Sophia's first official client. The contract was small, the fee modest, but the work was exactly what Sophia needed: challenging, meaningful, and completely disconnected from the Cross Industries network. "You're brilliant at this," Sarah told her after their third workshop session. "The way you helped us restructure our project management communication, it's like you could see problems we didn't even know we had." More importantly, Sarah began referring Sophia to other small business owners in her network. Word spread quietly through Seattle's entrepreneurial underground. There was a consultant who understood how to make teams work better, who listened before she prescribed solutions, who treated small businesses with the same respect that big firms reserved for Fortune 500 companies. "You look different," Maya observed one evening as they prepared dinner together. It had been 3 months since the divorce, and Sophia was finally contributing to groceries again. "Different how?" "You're not apologizing for existing anymore." The comment hit deeper than Maya probably intended. Sophia realized her sister was right. Somewhere in the process of rebuilding her business, she'd stopped the constant internal monologue of self-doubt that had defined her marriage. She no longer questioned every decision, second-guessed every opinion, or waited for permission to take up space in conversations. "I think," Sophia said slowly, "I'm remembering who I was before I became Mrs. Cross." Her client base grew steadily through the winter months. Small businesses, nonprofit organizations, community groups, people who needed her expertise but couldn't afford the premium consulting firms that Margaret's circle preferred. Sophia discovered she loved this work in a way she'd never loved anything at Cross Industries. These clients valued her insights, implemented her suggestions, thanked her for her time. They saw her as a problem solver, not a decorative appendage to someone else's success. The breakthrough moment came in February, when she landed a contract with a rapidly growing software company that needed comprehensive communication training before doubling their workforce. The project was ambitious, complex, and exactly the kind of challenge that would establish her reputation as more than just Ethan Cross's ex-wife. "This could change everything," she told Maya over dinner, unable to contain her excitement. "If I can pull this off, I'll have proven that I can handle major corporate projects independently." "When did you start saying if?" Maya asked with a grin. "The Sophia I know doesn't do if, she does, when." That night, Sophia worked until dawn, crafting a proposal that showcased everything she'd learned about building genuine workplace collaboration. As the sun rose over Seattle, painting her small bedroom workspace in shades of gold and possibility, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. She felt proud of herself. The phone call came 3 days later. "Miss Morgan? This is Jennifer Walsh from Coal Dynamics. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss your proposal." Coal Dynamics. Even Sophia, removed as she'd been from Seattle's business gossip, knew that name. Adrian Cole's company, the tech empire that had grown from nothing to challenge even established giants like Cross Industries. The one contract Ethan had never managed to steal, the one merger that had fallen through, the one competitor who seemed immune to the Cross Industries machine. "I'd be happy to meet," Sophia said, her heart racing. "When would be convenient?" "How about Monday morning?" Mr. Cole specifically requested to meet with you personally. After hanging up, Sophia sat in her small bedroom office, staring out the window at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere in that forest of glass and steel towers, Ethan Cross was probably sitting in his executive suite, believing he'd successfully erased her from his world. He had no idea that his greatest rival was about to give his ex-wife the opportunity of a lifetime. And Sophia intended to make absolutely certain that opportunity counted. The Cole Dynamics building stood like a testament to possibility in the heart of Seattle's tech district. Unlike the imposing glass fortress of Cross Industries with its cold, sterile lobby and security guards who treated visitors like potential threats, this place hummed with life. Sophia could hear laughter echoing from somewhere in the upper floors, the sound of actual human connection in a corporate space. "Miss Morgan?" The receptionist's smile was genuine, not the practiced politeness Sophia remembered from her Cross Industries days. "Mr. Cole is ready for you. Take the elevator to the 15th floor. His assistant Emma will meet you there." As the elevator climbed, Sophia caught glimpses of each floor through the glass panels. Open workspaces where people collaborated over whiteboards, a game room where employees took actual breaks, meeting rooms with walls covered in colorful sticky notes and innovative brainstorming sessions. This wasn't just a different company, it was a different philosophy. Emma greeted her with warmth that felt refreshingly authentic. "Mr. Cole is excited to meet you. Fair warning, he's probably going to grill you about your communication theories. He's genuinely passionate about this stuff." They walked down a hallway lined with employee achievement photos, startup milestone celebrations, and candid shots of team-building activities. It was everything Cross Industries wasn't: human, warm, real. Adrian Cole's office door was open, and Sophia could see him before he noticed her arrival. He was standing behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. The space reflected the same energy as the rest of the building: books scattered across surfaces, a whiteboard covered in equations and flow charts, windows that actually opened to let in fresh air. "No, Mike, I don't care what the quarterly projections look like on paper," he was saying into the phone. "If our employee satisfaction scores drop, we've failed as leaders. Period." He looked up as Emma knocked, and his expression shifted immediately. "I need to go. We'll continue this later." Adrian Cole was nothing like his media photos suggested. Shorter than Ethan, with laugh lines around intelligent brown eyes and a handshake that lingered just long enough to feel personal without crossing professional boundaries. Where Ethan commanded rooms through intimidation and inherited authority, Adrian's presence felt earned, confident without being arrogant, powerful without being cruel. "Miss Cross," he said, then immediately caught himself. "I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." "It's Morgan now," Sophia confirmed, appreciating that he'd corrected himself. "And I was avoiding you." His eyebrows rose with obvious amusement. "Refreshingly honest. I like that. Coffee?" "I make it myself. Fair warning, it's either excellent or terrible, depending on your tolerance for experimentation." "I'll risk it." As he prepared their coffee, Sophia studied his office more carefully. Unlike Ethan's sterile showcase of expensive art and status symbols, this space told stories. A guitar leaned against one wall, sheet music scattered on a side table. Bookshelves held everything from advanced programming texts to poetry collections. A photo showed Adrian with his team at what looked like a company retreat, everyone covered in paint from some kind of team-building exercise. "So," he said, handing her a mug that read "World's Okayasio," "tell me why you were avoiding Cole Dynamics." Sophia took a sip of the coffee, it was excellent, and considered her answer. "Because I assumed you knew who I was married to, and I figured this was either a publicity stunt or a way to get information about Cross Industries." "Fair assumption." Adrian settled into the chair across from her rather than behind his desk, eliminating the power dynamic that Ethan wielded like a weapon. "For the record, I've known about your marriage to Ethan Cross since day one." His mother's smear campaign wasn't exactly subtle. The directness should have been jarring, but instead Sophia felt relieved. "And you still wanted to meet with me?" "Especially because I wanted to meet with you." Adrian's expression grew serious. "Here's the thing about Margaret Cross trying to destroy someone's reputation. It tells me more about her than it does about you. And frankly, anyone Ethan Cross discarded is probably worth a closer look." They spent the next hour discussing Cole Dynamics' expansion plans. Adrian wanted to implement company-wide communication training before doubling their workforce. Ambitious, expensive, and exactly the kind of project that could establish Sophia as a major player in Seattle's consulting landscape. Our growth has been organic, sometimes chaotic, he explained, pulling up organizational charts on his laptop. We've got brilliant people who struggle to collaborate effectively across departments. Remote teams that feel disconnected from the main office. Managers who are technical geniuses but communication disasters. Sophia found herself leaning forward, engaged in a way she hadn't felt during any cross-industries meeting. What's your timeline? Aggressive. We're announcing the expansion in 6 months, which means we need these systems in place and running smoothly before then. Adrian studied her face. I know it's a massive undertaking. Most consulting firms have told me it's impossible. Most consulting firms don't understand that communication isn't just about processes, it's about culture, Sophia replied. You can't train people to collaborate effectively if the environment doesn't support genuine connection. Exactly. Adrian's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm Sophia remembered feeling about her work before Ethan had slowly drained it away. That's why I wanted to meet with you specifically. Your proposal was the only one that addressed the cultural component. As they dove deeper into the project details, Sophia felt her professional confidence resurging. She wasn't performing or trying to impress. She was problem-solving, strategizing, doing the work she genuinely loved. Adrian listened to her ideas without interrupting, asked thoughtful questions that showed he understood the complexity of what she was proposing, and treated her insights as valuable rather than decorative. There's something else you should know, Adrian said as their meeting stretched into the second hour. Margaret Cross has been calling my competitors, warning them about you. She's told them you're unstable, after the divorce, potentially unreliable. Sophia's coffee grew cold in her hands. How do you know that? Because she called me too. Adrian's smile held a sharp edge. She seemed to think I'd be particularly receptive to warnings about Ethan Cross's ex-wife. What she didn't understand is that anyone Margaret Cross warns me away from automatically becomes more interesting. And that doesn't concern you? The potential complications of hiring someone with so much baggage? Sophia. The way he said her name made her look up sharply. I've been watching Ethan Cross operate for 8 years. I've seen how he treats employees, vendors, competitors, anyone he perceives as beneath him. The fact that he threw away someone as brilliant as you tells me everything I need to know about his judgment. The compliment caught her off guard, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. When was the last time someone had called her brilliant? When had anyone besides Maya treated her intelligence as an asset rather than a threat? Why do you do that? She asked suddenly. Do what? Talk about me like I'm... She struggled to find the words. Like I'm worth something. Adrian's expression softened. Because you are. And the fact that you have to ask that question tells me exactly what kind of marriage you escaped. The vulnerability of the moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Sophia found herself studying Adrian's face, the genuine warmth in his eyes, the way he listened like her words actually mattered, the complete absence of the calculating coldness she'd grown accustomed to with Ethan. So, Adrian said finally, breaking the spell. Are you interested in taking on an impossible project with a CEO who makes questionable coffee and has probably bitten off more than he can chew? That depends, Sophia replied, surprised by her own boldness. Are you interested in working with a consultant who comes with more drama than a soap opera and a tendency to overthink everything? Lady Drama is my middle name. And overthinking is just thorough preparation in disguise. They shook hands on the deal and Sophia felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a professional opportunity, it was a chance to prove that Margaret Cross's sabotage had only made her stronger, that Ethan's cruelty had forged her into someone more resilient than either of them imagined. Walking out of Coal Dynamics that afternoon, Sophia pulled out her phone and called Maya. How did it go? Her sister asked immediately. I got the contract. That's amazing. What's he like? Sophia paused on the sidewalk, looking back up at the building where Adrian Cole was probably already implementing her suggestions, treating her ideas with the respect they deserved. He's dangerous, she said finally. Dangerous how? Sophia smiled, feeling something flutter in her chest that she'd thought Ethan had killed forever. He makes me remember what it feels like to be seen. That night, Sophia worked on the Coal Dynamics proposal until dawn, crafting a comprehensive plan that would revolutionize how the company approached internal communication. But more than that, she was crafting her own revolution, one that would prove to everyone, including herself, that her value had never been dependent on Ethan Cross's approval. She just didn't know yet that the man who'd hired her was about to become the man who'd heal her heart completely. The first month working with Coal Dynamics felt like emerging from a long, suffocating tunnel into sunlight. Sophia found herself looking forward to Monday mornings for the first time in years, eager to dive into the complex challenge of restructuring communication across a rapidly growing company. "Your preliminary assessment is brilliant," Adrian said during their third weekly check-in, spreading her charts across his conference table. "The way you've identified the bottlenecks between our remote and in-office teams, I've been struggling with this for months." Sophia felt warmth spread through her chest at the genuine appreciation in his voice. "The solution isn't just about better video conferencing or project management software. It's about creating connection points where people can build actual relationships." "Show me." She moved closer to point out specific areas on the organizational chart, and caught the subtle scent of his cologne. Something clean and understated, nothing like Ethan's aggressive designer fragrances that announced his presence before he entered a room. "See here?" She traced the workflow patterns with her finger. "Your design team and your development team are technically collaborating, but they're operating in separate universes. No shared language, no mutual understanding of constraints and possibilities." Adrian studied the charts, occasionally asking questions that showed he truly understood the complexity of what she was proposing. This was professional respect in its purest form, two minds working together toward a common goal, each bringing their expertise without ego or competition. "What do you recommend?" "Cross-functional workshops. But not the usual corporate team-building nonsense," Sophia said, warming to her subject. "Real working sessions where they solve actual problems together, learn each other's languages, understand how their decisions impact the other department." "That's actually revolutionary." The way he looked at her when he said it made her breath catch. There was admiration there, yes, but something deeper too. Something that made her remember she was more than just a problem solver or a consultant or an ex-wife carrying baggage. She was a woman. And for the first time in years she felt like one. Their professional meetings began extending naturally into longer conversations. Coffee turned into lunch discussions about implementation strategies. Lunch stretched into early dinner as they refined training modules. Neither of them acknowledged the shift explicitly, but both felt it, the gradual blurring of professional boundaries into something more personal. "My ex-wife used to say I was married to the business," Adrian told her one evening as they reviewed training materials in his office. The building had emptied hours ago, but neither seemed eager to leave. She wasn't wrong. "After the divorce, I threw myself even deeper into work. Built this place into something that could compete with anyone, including your ex-husband." "How long were you married?" Sophia asked, surprised by her own curiosity about his personal life. "4 years. Same as you." Adrian's smile was rueful. "Different problems though. Sarah wanted me to be someone I wasn't, more social, more interested in the Seattle society scene, more willing to use cold dynamics as a networking tool rather than an actual business." "And you weren't interested in that life?" "I'd rather build something meaningful than schmooze at charity galas where people write checks for tax deductions." He paused, studying her face. "What about you? What did Ethan want you to be?" The question hit deeper than expected. "Smaller," Sophia said quietly. "He wanted me to take up less space, have fewer opinions, need less attention. I spent 4 years trying to compress myself into whatever shape would make him comfortable. That must have been exhausting." "It was. But the worst part was losing track of who I actually was underneath all that performance." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then said, "For what it's worth, I think the real you is pretty extraordinary." The compliment hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Sophia felt her pulse quicken, recognizing the flutter of attraction she'd thought Ethan had destroyed forever. "Adrian?" "I know," he said quickly. "I know you're not ready for this, whatever this is. I just wanted you to know that someone sees you, the real you, and thinks you're worth seeing." That night, driving home through the rain-soaked Seattle streets, Sophia called her therapist. "I want to add another session this week," she told Dr. Martinez. "I think I'm ready to talk about what comes after healing." Dr. Martinez's office had become another sanctuary over the past few months, a place where Sophia could untangle the psychological knots that 4 years with Ethan had tied in her mind. The sessions weren't easy, but they were necessary. "You mentioned last week that you're starting to feel attraction again," Dr. Martinez said during their Thursday appointment. "How does that feel?" "Terrifying," Sophia admitted. "What if I'm just repeating patterns? What if I'm attracted to Adrian because he's Ethan's rival, not because of who he actually is?" "What do you think?" Sophia considered the question seriously. "When I was with Ethan, I was always performing. Always trying to be the version of myself that would make him happy. With Adrian, I don't feel like I need to perform. I feel like I can just be myself. And how does that feel? Like coming home to myself. The breakthrough came during a particularly intense training session with Coal Dynamics management team. Sophia was facilitating a communication exercise when one of the department heads, a man named Robert who reminded her uncomfortably of Ethan, began undermining her authority. I'm not sure someone who couldn't make her own marriage work is qualified to teach us about collaboration, he said with a cold smile. The room went silent. Sophia felt the familiar flood of shame and self-doubt, the automatic impulse to apologize and shrink away. But then she caught Adrian's eye across the room. He wasn't rushing to her defense or trying to control the situation. He was simply waiting, trusting her to handle it herself. And she did. You're right, Robert, she said calmly. My marriage failed spectacularly. But that failure taught me something valuable about what collaboration actually requires. Respect, genuine listening, and the willingness to prioritize the relationship over being right. From what I've observed today, those are skills you might benefit from developing. The man's face flushed red, but he didn't respond. The rest of the team looked impressed, and Sophia felt something powerful settle into her bones. She wasn't the woman who'd been broken in that cross-industries boardroom. She was someone stronger, someone who could stand up for herself without apology or explanation. After the session, Adrian found her in the break room. That was masterful, he said, pouring himself coffee from the machine. I almost lost it for a second there. But you didn't. You held your ground and turned his attack into a teaching moment. Adrian's eyes held warmth and something that looked like pride. That's the mark of someone who's done the hard work of knowing their own worth. Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Cole? That's my personal observation, Ms. Morgan. The way he said her name, like it mattered, like she mattered, made her heart skip. She was beginning to understand that what she felt for Adrian wasn't rebound attraction or misplaced gratitude. It was the recognition of someone who saw her clearly and chose to value what he saw. Adrian, she said carefully, would you like to have dinner sometime? Not a working dinner. Just dinner. His smile could have powered the entire building. I thought you'd never ask. As they stood in that ordinary break room, surrounded by the mundane details of office life, Sophia felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't the desperate, grasping feeling she'd mistaken for love with Ethan. This was steadier, warmer, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. It felt like the beginning of something real. And for the first time since her divorce, Sophia allowed herself to hope that she deserved something real. The workplace health screening was routine, a benefit of Sophia's new corporate insurance through her consulting practice. She almost skipped it, buried as she was in the final preparations for Coal Dynamics' comprehensive training rollout. But Maya had been relentless. When's the last time you saw a doctor who wasn't chosen by Margaret Cross? Her sister had demanded over breakfast. The question hit harder than intended. During her marriage, even Sophia's healthcare had been managed by the Cross family physician, Dr. Harrison, a man who'd treated Margaret for 30 years and seemed to view Sophia as an extension of her mother-in-law rather than an individual patient. Dr. Sarah Chen's office felt like stepping into a different universe. Younger, more modern, with walls covered in medical degrees from prestigious universities and patient testimonials that spoke of thoroughness and genuine care. Dr. Chen herself was refreshingly direct, treating Sophia like an intelligent adult rather than a delicate flower who couldn't handle medical realities. I'm reviewing your medical history, Dr. Chen said, frowning at her computer screen during their initial consultation. I see you had fertility testing done last year. These results seem incomplete. Sophia's heart clenched, the familiar shame washing over her like a tide. What do you mean? Well, for starters, there's no male factor analysis. That's standard protocol when couples are experiencing difficulty conceiving. About 40% of fertility issues are male-related, so any comprehensive evaluation should include both partners. The room seemed to tilt. My husband wasn't tested. Never? Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose with obvious surprise. That's highly unusual. Modern fertility medicine always evaluates both partners simultaneously. And looking at these hormone levels? She scrolled through the digital file. I'd like to run them again. Sometimes severe stress can temporarily skew results, and according to your intake form, you were going through significant marital difficulties at the time. Sophia sat in stunned silence as Dr. Chen explained the testing protocol she should have received. Comprehensive hormone panels, ovarian reserve testing, structural evaluations, none of which had been performed during her original assessment. Dr. Harrison had run a basic panel during what was arguably the most stressful period of her life and declared her the source of their fertility problems. "I don't understand," Sophia whispered. Dr. Harrison said the results were conclusive. Dr. Harrison should have known better, Dr. Chin said with barely concealed disapproval. Fertility is always a couple's issue, never just a woman's burden to carry. Without testing both partners, any diagnosis is essentially meaningless. The blood work appointment was scheduled for the following week. Sophia left Dr. Chen's office feeling like she was walking through a dream, or perhaps waking up from a nightmare she'd been living for months. She drove aimlessly through Seattle's afternoon traffic, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider. What if the problem had never been hers at all? "You're quiet tonight," Adrian observed during their dinner date, their third official non-working meal together. They'd chosen a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill, far from the upscale establishments where they might encounter Seattle's business elite. "Just processing something," Sophia said, twirling pasta around her fork without really eating. "I had a medical appointment today. My new doctor wants to rerun some tests." "Everything okay?" She looked up to find genuine concern in his eyes, not the calculating assessment she'd grown accustomed to with Ethan, but real worry for her well-being. The difference still caught her off guard sometimes. "I think so. It's just, do you ever wonder how much of what you believed about yourself was actually true?" Adrian set down his wine glass, giving her his full attention. "What do you mean?" "The fertility test that convinced Ethan I was the problem, they were apparently incomplete. My new doctor seems to think the whole diagnosis was based on inadequate information." "Jesus, Sophia." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You mean to tell me that bastard blamed you for something without even getting proper medical evaluation?" "It's starting to look that way." The anger in Adrian's eyes was fierce and protective, nothing like Ethan's cold disappointment when faced with inconvenient truths. "I'm sorry. I know this must be confusing and painful. I keep thinking about all the shame I carried. All the times I apologized for failing him, for not being able to give him what he wanted. What if none of it was necessary?" Adrian reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Even if the medical diagnosis was wrong, his treatment of you was inexcusable. No matter what challenges you were facing, you deserved compassion and support, not public humiliation." The test results came back exactly 1 week later. Dr. Chen called personally to discuss them, her voice warm with what sounded like vindication. "I have good news, Sophia. Your hormone levels are completely normal. Your ovarian reserve is excellent for your age. The structural evaluation shows no abnormalities. There is absolutely nothing wrong with your reproductive system." Sophia gripped the phone tighter, barely breathing. "But the other tests?" "The other tests were performed during a period of extreme stress, which can temporarily suppress fertility hormones. Additionally, they were incomplete and inadequately interpreted. You've been carrying a false diagnosis for months." After hanging up, Sophia sat in her car in the medical building parking lot for an hour, crying angry tears. Not because she wanted Ethan back, that chapter of her life was permanently closed, but because she carried the weight of their failure alone, had absorbed his cruelty and Margaret's disappointment, had restructured her entire sense of self around a lie. She thought about calling him, demanding he get tested, forcing him to confront the possibility that he'd been wrong. The fantasy of his shock and remorse was satisfying for about 30 seconds before she realized the pointlessness of it. Ethan had shown her exactly who he was in that boardroom. The medical truth wouldn't change the emotional reality of what he'd done. Instead, she drove straight to Adrian's office. "I brought Chinese food," she announced, holding up takeout bags as his assistant waved her through. "And I have something important to tell you." They spread the containers across his conference table, sharing lo mein and spring rolls while she explained Dr. Chen's findings. Adrian listened without interruption, his expression darkening as she described the original doctor's dismissive attitude, Margaret's orchestration of the incomplete testing, Ethan's reaction to the false diagnosis. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice rough with suppressed anger. "Not just about the medical mistake but about what you were led to believe about yourself. About how they made you carry that burden alone. The strangest part is, I'm not even angry about the medical error anymore. I'm angry about the assumptions. That it had to be my fault. That I didn't deserve a complete evaluation. That my feelings didn't matter as much as their need for someone to blame." Adrian pushed aside his container and moved closer to her on the small couch in his office seating area. "For what it's worth, I think Ethan Cross is an idiot in more ways than I can count. And anyone who couldn't see your worth was never worthy of you in the first place. When he kissed her that night, soft and tentative in the quiet office, it tasted like truth, like possibility, like everything she'd thought she'd lost forever. And for the first time since her marriage had imploded, Sophia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be loved by someone who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. The revelation had set her free from more than just a false medical diagnosis. It had freed her from the last chains of shame that Ethan Cross had wrapped around her heart. That first kiss in Adrian's office became the foundation for something Sophia had never experienced before, a relationship built on truth rather than performance. There were no games, no calculations, no careful monitoring of moods and reactions. Just two people who'd been broken by their previous marriages choosing to build something entirely different together. "I want to take this slow," Sophia told him the next evening as they walked through Pike Place Market, weaving between tourists and locals in the golden hour before sunset. "Not because I don't want this, but because I want to do it right." "Define slow," Adrian said with a smile, adjusting his pace to match her leisurely stroll. "I want to know you. Really know you. Your fears, your dreams, the things that make you laugh at 2 in the morning. I want to understand what makes you who you are when no one's watching." "That's not slow, Sophia. That's thorough. There's a difference." They spent the following months doing exactly that, learning each other with the patience of people who'd made the mistake of rushing before. Weekend mornings at farmers' markets, where Adrian revealed his surprisingly extensive knowledge of organic farming techniques. Evening cooking sessions in Sophia's small apartment, where she discovered he could make pasta from scratch but couldn't scramble eggs without burning them. "Tell me about your family," she said one night as they sat on her tiny balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and watching Seattle's skyline sparkle in the darkness. "Not much to tell. Parents divorced when I was 12. Dad was a workaholic who built a moderately successful construction company and forgot he had a son. Mom remarried and moved to Portland when I was 16. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sophia caught the underlying hurt. "I learned early that if I wanted something built, whether it was a business or a relationship, I had to do it myself." "Is that why you work so hard? To prove something to him?" "Maybe initially. But now." He turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "Now I work hard because I want to build something that lasts. Something that matters." The way he said it made her understand that he wasn't just talking about cold dynamics. Their relationship unfolded in stolen moments between her consulting projects and his executive responsibilities. Quiet dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants where they wouldn't be seen by Seattle's gossip mill. Long walks through neighborhoods where Adrian would point out architectural details with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved his city. Sunday mornings spent reading different sections of the newspaper while their feet touched under the covers of Sophia's bed. "You know what I love about us?" Sophia said one morning, looking up from the arts section to find Adrian focused intently on a technology article. "What's that? We can just exist together. I don't feel like I need to entertain you or be on all the time." Adrian set down his paper and pulled her closer. "That's because you don't. I fell in love with who you actually are, not who you think you should be." The word love hung between them like a bridge they'd both been approaching but hadn't quite crossed yet. Sophia felt her heart skip, not with anxiety but with recognition. "I love you too," she said simply. "The real you. The one who makes terrible coffee and argues with the newspaper and stays late at the office because you genuinely care about your employees." It was Margaret Cross who forced their relationship into the public eye, though certainly not intentionally. Sophia was leaving Adrian's building after an evening meeting when she spotted the familiar silver Mercedes in the parking lot. Margaret herself emerged from the lobby, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. "You manipulative little opportunist," Margaret hissed, her usual polished composure cracking completely. "Seducing my son's biggest competitor? How pathetically predictable." "Mrs. Cross." Sophia's voice was steady, though her pulse quickened. "Adrian and I are simply... Don't you dare play innocent with me. I know exactly what you're doing and it won't work. I'll make sure every respectable person in this city knows what kind of woman you really are." "And what kind of woman is that?" "The kind who destroys marriages and then runs straight to her ex-husband's rival for revenge." Adrian's voice cut through the parking lot like a blade. "That's enough." He'd emerged from the building behind Margaret, his expression thunderous. Sophia had never seen him angry before, not truly angry, and the controlled fury radiating from him was both terrifying and oddly comforting. "Mr. Cole," Margaret said, attempting to regain her composure, "I was simply trying to warn you about the kind of woman you're involving yourself with." "The kind of woman I'm involving myself with," Adrian said, moving to stand beside Sophia, is intelligent, compassionate, and strong enough to rebuild her life after your family tried to destroy it. If that threatens you, Mrs. Cross, perhaps you should examine your own motivations. Margaret's face flushed red. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Actually, I do. I'm getting myself into a relationship with a woman who deserves far better than she got from your son. And if you continue to harass her, you'll discover exactly how seriously I take threats against people I care about. After Margaret's Mercedes disappeared into the Seattle traffic, Adrian turned to Sophia with concern etched across his features. Are you okay? I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Sophia felt something settle into place in her chest, a sense of being protected and valued that she'd never experienced with Ethan. Thank you for standing up for me. You don't need to thank me for that. We're a team now. The proposal came 6 months later, during a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. Nothing elaborate or public. Just Adrian and Sophia on a quiet beach at sunset, talking about their future with the kind of easy intimacy that had defined their entire relationship. I want to build a life with you, he said, producing a simple, elegant ring from his jacket pocket. Not because I need you to complete me or because you fit into some predetermined plan, but because you make me want to be the best version of myself, and I hope I do the same for you. Yes, Sophia said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. The wedding planning process revealed just how different this relationship was from her first marriage. Where Ethan and Margaret had orchestrated every detail of her previous wedding like a corporate merger announcement, Adrian listened to what Sophia actually wanted and helped make it happen. Small ceremony, she told him. Family and close friends only. Somewhere meaningful to us, not designed to impress people we don't really like. The botanical gardens where we had our third date? Perfect. They wrote their own vows, choosing words that reflected their actual relationship rather than generic promises about roles and expectations. Maya cried during the ceremony, happy tears for a sister who'd finally found someone who cherished rather than diminished her. You look different than you did at your first wedding, Maya observed during the reception, a casual gathering in the garden's reception hall. Different how? Like yourself. Like the person you were always meant to be. That night, in their suite at a small bed and breakfast on Vashon Island, Sophia lay in Adrian's arms and felt the profound peace of being exactly where she belonged. What are you thinking about? He asked, tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. How patient you were with me. How you never pushed or demanded or tried to fix me. You didn't need fixing. You needed space to heal and remember who you were. And now we build whatever comes next. Together. Outside their window, the Puget Sound stretched toward infinity, reflecting moonlight like scattered diamonds. Inside their room, two people who'd learned the difference between love and possession settled into their first night as partners in the truest sense of the word. Neither of them knew yet that their greatest joy, and Sophia's ultimate vindication, was already beginning to grow within her. The first year of marriage was a revelation in ordinary magic. Adrian treated Sophia like an equal partner in everything. Business decisions, household choices, even which restaurant to try on Friday nights. It was mundane and revolutionary at the same time, this life built on mutual respect rather than power dynamics. I used to think love meant sacrificing yourself for someone else's vision, Sophia told Dr. Martinez during one of their monthly sessions. She'd continued therapy even after the wedding, recognizing that healing was an ongoing process rather than a destination. And now I think it means building something together that makes you both more than you were alone. Coal dynamics continued to flourish, and with it, Sophia's consulting practice. She was turning down clients now, a luxury she'd never imagined during those desperate early months after her divorce. Her reputation was built on results rather than connections, and that felt like vindication of the most satisfying kind. It was during one of these peaceful periods, a rare week without travel, with deadlines met and projects humming along smoothly, that Sophia's body began to whisper secrets she wasn't ready to hear. At first, she attributed the bone-deep fatigue to her demanding schedule. The wave of nausea that hit her during a client presentation seemed like stress. It wasn't until she realized she'd missed her second period that the impossible possibility began to take shape in her mind. The pregnancy test sat on their bathroom counter for 20 minutes while Sophia stared at it, afraid to look. She'd bought it during lunch, hidden it in her purse like contraband, waiting until Adrian left for an evening board meeting before taking it. When she finally worked up the courage to check the results, the two pink lines seemed to glow against the white plastic. Pregnant. She was pregnant. The word felt foreign in her mouth, loaded with 4 years of shame and disappointment and medical lies. But underneath the disbelief, something else was stirring, a joy so fierce and unexpected it took her breath away. Adrian found her there an hour later, still holding the test like a talisman. "Sophia? I saw your car in the driveway but you didn't answer when I—" He stopped when he saw her face, taking in her tear-streaked cheeks and the plastic stick in her trembling hands. "What's wrong?" She held up the test wordlessly. His reaction wasn't what she'd expected. Instead of shock or joy or even concern, Adrian's face crumpled with something that looked almost like grief. He sank to his knees beside her chair, his hands covering his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "This is my fault. I should have been more careful." "Your fault?" Sophia stared at him, genuinely confused. "Adrian, what are you talking about? I know how much the fertility issue hurt you. I know you've made peace with not having children. You've built this beautiful life, found success and happiness, and now—" He gestured helplessly at the test. "I've screwed everything up." For a moment she couldn't speak. This wonderful, careful, considerate man was apologizing for giving her something she'd wanted so desperately that she'd convinced herself she didn't want it at all. "Adrian." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I'm not upset because I'm pregnant. I'm upset because I'm happy about it and I don't know if I'm allowed to be." They held each other on the bathroom floor, crying for different reasons that somehow added up to the same overwhelming relief. 4 years of medical lies, public humiliation, and internalized shame began to dissolve in the face of this simple, miraculous truth. She was carrying their child. Their healthy, wanted, celebrated child. The pregnancy progressed like a dream, smooth and uncomplicated, as if Sophia's body was making up for lost time. Morning sickness faded by the second trimester. Her energy returned stronger than before. She glowed, literally glowed according to Maya, who appointed herself official photographer of the transformation. "You look like yourself again," Adrian said one evening, his hand resting on her growing belly as they lay in bed. "The self you were meant to be all along." Sophia had been thinking the same thing. Somewhere in the process of healing from her marriage, building a business, falling in love again, and now growing a child, she'd found the woman she'd been before Ethan and Margaret Cross had tried to reshape her into someone smaller and more manageable. She was fiercer now. More protective of her own worth. Less willing to apologize for taking up space in the world. The pregnancy had awakened something primal and powerful in her. Not just the biological drive to protect her unborn child, but the psychological drive to protect the woman she'd fought so hard to become. Which made the inevitable encounter with Ethan both easier and harder than she'd expected. She was leaving her obstetrician's office on a crisp March afternoon, hand resting unconsciously on her 6-month belly, when she saw him across the medical building parking lot. Ethan looked older, grayer around the temples despite being only 35. The successful businessman's uniform, tailored suit, expensive watch, perfect posture, couldn't quite hide the fact that he looked tired. "Hello." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Ethan was walking toward her, his expression shifting from shock to something harder to read. "Sophia." His voice was carefully neutral, but she caught the slight tremor underneath. "You look, well. Thank you." She didn't move toward her car, but she didn't step closer either. "How are you, Ethan?" His eyes dropped to her belly, and she saw the exact moment understanding hit him. His face went through a series of micro-expressions. Confusion, realization, something that might have been pain or anger or both. "Congratulations," he said finally. The word sounded like it physically hurt him to say. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, two people who'd once shared a life now connected only by the weight of shared history and mutual damage. Sophia felt nothing for him, no anger, no sadness, no residual affection. Just a kind of distant curiosity like observing an exhibit in a museum. "I heard you married Cole," Ethan said, and there was definitely an edge to his voice now. "Interesting choice." "Adrian is a good man," Sophia replied simply. "Is he?" Ethan's composure cracked slightly. "Or did you just want to prove a point?" The accusation hung between them, ugly and predictable. This was the Ethan she remembered, the one who couldn't imagine that anyone's choices weren't somehow about him. "You think I married Adrian to hurt you?" Sophia asked, genuinely curious rather than defensive. "You think I got pregnant to prove you wrong? Didn't you?" For a moment, she was tempted to tell him about Dr. Chen's findings, about the incomplete fertility testing, about the male factor analysis that had never been performed. She wanted to watch his face when he realized that his cruel certainty had been built on medical negligence and his mother's manipulations. But looking at him now, This bitter, diminished version of the man she'd once loved. She realized that the truth wouldn't heal him any more than his lies had healed her. "You were right about one thing," she said quietly. "I couldn't have had a child with you. But not because my body couldn't, because my heart couldn't." Ethan's face went very still. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that creating life requires more than just biology. It requires love that makes space for growth rather than demanding conformity. It requires partnership that builds up rather than tears down. It requires seeing your partner as a whole person rather than a function in your business plan." She started walking toward her car, then paused. "You never loved me, Ethan. You loved the idea of me, the perfectly crafted wife who would fit seamlessly into your predetermined life. When I couldn't be that fantasy, you discarded me. But Adrian..." She smiled, one hand moving protectively to her belly. "Adrian loves the real me. All of me. Even the parts that don't fit into neat categories or serve obvious purposes. So this is your revenge? Marry my biggest competitor and have his baby?" The question revealed everything about how Ethan saw the world, as a series of transactions and power plays where every choice was calculated for maximum strategic advantage. "This isn't revenge, Ethan. This is life. Real life, built on real love with someone who sees me as more than a means to an end." Sophia opened her car door, then looked back at him one final time. "I hope you find what you're looking for. But I hope you learn to look for it in the right places." Driving home through Seattle's familiar streets, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced since the day she'd walked out of that boardroom. Complete and utter freedom. Not just from Ethan's judgment or Margaret's manipulation, but from the last vestiges of shame and self-doubt they'd planted in her heart. That night, she told Adrian about the encounter over dinner. "How do you feel?" he asked, reaching across their small dining table to take her hand. "Free," she said, surprised by the honesty of it. "For the first time since I married him, I feel completely free." "Good," Adrian said, bringing her hand to his lips to press a gentle kiss to her palm. "Because you deserve to feel free. You deserve to feel loved. And you deserve to believe that this," he gestured to her belly, to their home, to the life they'd built together, "is exactly what you were meant to have." As their daughter kicked gently against Sophia's ribs, as if in agreement, Sophia finally understood what Maya had been trying to tell her all along. Love wasn't about making yourself smaller. It was about finding someone who celebrated how magnificent you could become. 3 months later, Elena Rose Cole arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to make her grand entrance into the world. She came quickly, decisively, with none of the complications that Sophia's previous doctors had predicted would plague any pregnancy she might achieve. "She's perfect," Dr. Chin said, placing the squirming, alert baby on Sophia's chest. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and clearly her mother's determination. Elena's eyes opened immediately, dark like Adrian's but with an unmistakable spark of curiosity that was purely her own. She looked around the delivery room with the focused attention of someone who'd been eagerly waiting to see what all the fuss was about. "Hello, beautiful girl," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she touched her daughter's tiny hand. "We've been waiting for you." Adrian, who'd been a steady presence throughout the entire labor, leaned over to kiss both his wife and daughter. "She's incredible. Look at her, she already knows exactly who she is." Maya arrived within the hour, bearing flowers and barely contained excitement. "She's gorgeous," she whispered, carefully holding her niece for the first time. "She looks like she belongs exactly where she is." It was true. Elena fit perfectly into their arms, their family, their life, as if she'd been designed specifically for this moment, these parents, this love story that had required heartbreak and healing to reach its proper conclusion. "I can't believe she's really here," Sophia said later that evening, when the visitors had gone home and Elena was sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside the hospital bed. "I can," Adrian replied, curling up beside his wife in the narrow hospital bed. "She's exactly what happens when two people love each other the way we do. When they create space for miracles instead of trying to control every outcome." Outside their window, Seattle sparkled in the darkness, the same city where Sophia had once felt so small and powerless. Now it looked full of possibility, full of new beginnings and second chances and the kind of justice that arrives not through revenge but through the simple act of building something beautiful from the ashes of what came before. "Thank you," Adrian whispered against Sophia's hair. "For what?" "For teaching me the difference between taking up space and making room for each other. For showing me what it means to love someone without trying to change them. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For believing I was worth loving when I'd forgotten how to believe it." As Elena stirred in her sleep, making the tiny sounds that newborns make when they're dreaming of the world they've just entered. Sophia felt the last piece of her healing fall into place. This wasn't just about having a baby or proving Ethan wrong. This was about completing the journey back to herself, the woman who'd been buried under years of criticism and control, now finally free to be exactly who she was meant to be. Meanwhile, across town in the penthouse that had once been their shared prison, Ethan Cross sat alone in his study, staring at an unopened envelope on his mahogany desk. The return address read Seattle Fertility Associates. The comprehensive male factor analysis his lawyer had finally convinced him to take after the divorce proceedings raised uncomfortable questions about the incomplete testing that had destroyed his marriage. The envelope had been sitting there for 3 days. 3 days of avoiding the truth he'd been too proud and too certain to seek when it might have mattered. 3 days of wondering if the woman he'd publicly humiliated had been innocent of the failure he'd blamed her for. 3 days of calculating the cost of his cruelty in terms he was only beginning to understand. Margaret had called twice, wanting to discuss the situation with Sophia's pregnancy and what it might mean for the family's reputation. But Ethan hadn't taken her calls. For the first time in his adult life, his mother's opinions felt irrelevant, her manipulations transparent and ultimately destructive. He poured himself another scotch and continued staring at the envelope, knowing that whatever it contained would arrive far too late to matter. Some truths he was learning came with expiration dates. Some chances, once destroyed, couldn't be reconstructed with apologies or money or even genuine remorse. But some truths arrived exactly when they were supposed to, not to heal old wounds but to prevent new ones. Not to change the past but to illuminate the path forward. Back in the hospital room, as Elena Rose Cole settled into her first night of life surrounded by parents who would love her unconditionally, who would celebrate her existence as the miracle it was, who would never make her feel like she needed to earn her place in their hearts, Sophia closed her eyes and smiled. She'd started this journey as a woman who'd lost everything. Her marriage, her home, her sense of self, even her belief in her own worth. She was ending it as a woman who'd gained something infinitely more valuable. A love built on truth, a family created from choice rather than obligation, and the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly enough, exactly as she was. The rain continued to fall against the hospital windows, washing the city clean for whatever came next. And in room 247, a family that had been forged from heartbreak and hope settled into their first night together, complete at last. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that your worth isn't determined by people who can't see your value, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because every ending is really just a new beginning, and every woman deserves a love story that builds her up instead of tearing her down. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living so well that the people who tried to diminish you become irrelevant to your happiness. And sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale ending you thought was impossible is exactly the one you were meant to have all along. If this story reminded you that your worth isn't determined by people who can't see your value, please hit that like button right now. And subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss another empowering tale from Mr. Ashbourne Golden Narratives.